I'd like to welcome those of you who've arrived already. We are the Studio City Neighborhood Council's Government Affairs Committee, and tonight we have with us Jonathan Sherin, who is the Director of the County of Los Angeles Mental Health Department, which is large, 250,000 patients or something like that a year, or maybe more now. And the county, as you know, is 11 million residents and spans a lot of square miles. And Dr. Sherin has been in place since November of 2016. We were just talking offline for a moment about the process. He was working for a not-for-profit that was based both here and in Miami. Maybe you could give us a brief introduction and we'll get on with the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about anything. I'm happy to just answer questions or tell you, what thoughts about what we can try to do, what we're trying to do. But a little history, I mean, as Eric was saying, I actually am a psychiatrist. I'm a neurobiologist. Went to school for a long time. Did my residency at UCLA. Worked at the West Los Angeles VA, which is this property that we're talking about. Ended up getting so frustrated inside the VA that, I kind of, the system's failures were, you try to care for people and they just fall through the cracks for whatever reasons. And I guess the VA made the mistake of not getting rid of me and giving me more responsibility, so I ended up kind of running mental health for that VA. Then I went to the Miami VA, so that's all federal government bureaucratic job. Then spent 5 years working out of DC for a national nonprofit, Volunteers of America. I don't know if you know about Volunteers of America. It's probably the biggest direct service provider that cares for the vulnerable populations, and really was the first nonprofit to go into the jails and prisons and push for reintegration, reentry. And then I worked on this project. The VA pulled me back as a consultant to work on this property where I had run mental health to try to do something about all the homeless veterans. And the plan that we developed, that I was just kind of describing, was one that has 1,200 permanent supportive units, lots of interim housing, residential treatment, as well as the health care and the addictions treatment and the mental health services, education training and employment opportunities for vets. We were really trying to harken back to the heyday when there were 4,000 veterans living on the campus.
Actually, what was that like?
You should see some pictures.
Yeah.
There's pictures. President McKinley went to visit the veterans on that campus, and it was just like a mob scene of vets and beautiful rows of Victorian homes. If you go down Wilshire Boulevard before coming east from the ocean, before you get to the 405, you'll see on the left there's a beautiful chapel that's been in disrepair for over 50 years, and it's falling apart, which is the oldest building on Wilshire Boulevard, the second oldest building on the campus. And we're actually, the only thing I do outside of the county is work on the restoration of that spiritual venue, which we want to kind of, we want to lift up, and we want to get veterans to restore it. And I've been working on that for about a decade with the family that actually donated the property in 1888 for veterans.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, the matriarch of that family is still alive, living on San Vicente, and beyond frustrated and ornery about the lack of responsiveness by the VA and the dilapidation of the 5 original structures. That's only one of them.
Right. I mean, it is one of the great insults that veterans who do, service the way they do and then come back and we struggle, to find a way, not just for them, but it's certainly going to be very Let me ask you about the program that you talk about, the plan. I think 1,200 units sounds like a lot, and I know that this plan has not yet necessarily been realized, but do you know of a program called Haven of Hope in I think Texas, where is it that kind of a thing where this is a campus-like environment where, it sounded like that's exactly what you described, where there's kind of Would it be a public-private partnership?
Yeah, yes, it would be, and hopefully it will be.
Yeah.
And it's really it's a town concept. You know, in the middle of the 400 acres, there's a town center. You know, which will have lots of amenities
Right.
and activities for veterans. I mean, you're talking about veterans coming back. I mean, the thing that I don't think people realize, and it's not just the vet, although that's kind of the classic example, but leave your life behind and the things that you're engaged in, your family, your connections, maybe your career or your education.
Well,
and then you go to serve as a part of the military family and to pursue a mission. And when you come back, the mission is gone and the family is gone. Right? And what we don't do is we don't recognize that these, vets are civic assets and leaders. They're disciplined, team-oriented individuals who, when they come back to a different world. Maybe it's the same country and maybe things haven't changed in the community, but their lives are dramatically different, whether or not they've been traumatized by combat. Because you can imagine what it does to be away from your family and to leave behind your education. We need to set up platforms for veterans to thrive, to have purpose, to have belonging when they separate, which is there's a whole initiative right now, the Veteran Peer Access Network, that you may have heard about, kind of behind that, which is that, hiring veterans all over Los Angeles County to pay it forward when they come back and help their brothers and sisters who are homeless and at risk for suicide.
Right.
And you said it was the Veterans Peer Access?
Peer. Yeah. I'm a big peer promoter. Like a lived experience role. And one of the things that we can touch on are the different legislative activities in the county that are relevant, I think, for mental health and for homelessness. And this is one of them. I was in the Senate testifying, I think, 2 weeks ago, the Senate Health Committee around a bill called Senate Bill 10. Senate Bill 10 will provide statewide certification and Medicaid reimbursement for peer support services, which allows us, if that happens, if the bill passes, it would allow us to hire peers. Veterans would be one, individuals who have been incarcerated, people with lived experience in the mental health arena who have addictions issues, kids from the foster care system, to be a part of the solution and to inform the systems and the programs from the inside out, which is a big deal.
What's the bill name?
It's Senate Bill 10, and the author is a guy, it's Senator Bell, B-E-A-L-L, big mental health advocate.
Of the permanent supportive housing entitlement, how many of the occupants can at some point claim or acknowledge that PTSD,
PTSD.
contributed to their homelessness? Is there a connection made?
Yeah, I think there's a big connection, and getting back to what I was saying about coming back and not having, the human connection of family, like that you leave behind with the military, and not having a purpose in life, a direction.
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself, I think, is traumatic. Combat exposure, other life-threatening experiences, obviously, are acutely traumatic. And it's those types of things which cause, clinical needs and gaps in the social determinants of health, leave people kind of lost. And, so it becomes difficult to hold a job or to get a job. That can lead to the fracturing family. Then you get into the substance abuse. Then you get into legal problems. Then you get into the homelessness. And then you get into the suicide. It's a horrendous series.
Do you see a difference between the veterans who came back from World War II, and many of them have lived productive lives till their 90s, versus, let's say, the Vietnam veterans? I mean, you know what I'm getting at, that they were welcomed versus not. Do you think that's because it just seems this veteran crisis, the homelessness, I don't think it happened with World War II vets as much at all.
Well, there was a movie, The Best Years of Our
I saw the
Lives.
movie, loved the movie, cried, but I'm just saying, that movie, they should redo it, because obviously it's a lot going on now, and you must know that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah,
The different eras they're different for so many reasons.
right.
I mean, there are different terms for combat stress, soldier's heart, post-traumatic stress, call it what you will. In different parts of the world, it's called different things. And some countries deal with it much better than others. We don't really deal with it effectively here. In fact, the handoff from the DoD, the Department of Defense, and the VA is it's a cold handoff. It's a no handoff. And that's a part of the problem. But absolutely, World War II, there was an identified enemy, there was an identified victory. Everyone had a purpose, and when they came back, they were heroes. Vietnam, I mean, I guess I was born, but I mean, that was horrendous what happened. So you can imagine, you come back, your life has been ruined, and then you're blamed and spat on.
And Iraq too.
In Iraq too. So that's a big part of the problem.
Right.
But the thing that is being recognized, and the people that are recognizing it more than anyone, are the vets. There are a couple of nonprofits. One of them is called The Mission Continues. Another one is Student Veterans of America. There's another one which is my favorite called Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon is based in LA. And they all are about coming back, as assets and doing work here. Team Rubicon mobilizes, I think, tens of thousands of veterans now around the world in the aftermath of disaster. So when there's a major hurricane, actually an earthquake, not just here, but around the world, veterans flood to come together, and they're actually now working with and contracted with FEMA. Originally, FEMA was like, get out of here, you're threatening our purpose. But they were like, no, we're not going away.
I just wonder if maybe the World War II, the 40s, maybe the trauma did. I mean, the trauma had to exist, but I don't think it was talked about. I think when you were a man in the 40s, you talked about being traumatized.
No, absolutely. I think the basic phenomena we're talking about, I think, are relevant for all eras in the military, even in non-combat periods of time. But what I think is important is what did you come back to, and how much were you embraced? And one of the things that was really fascinating was when the Iraq War started, there were Vietnam veterans came out of the woodwork, decompensating, relapsed on alcohol and drugs, because the thing that they really had been able to hide from, they couldn't hide from. We were back in a war. So when they saw stuff on TV, it really activated a lot of hidden issues. And I think that's a real phenomenon.
So you saw an uptick. I mean, there was an
Big
uptick
time.
statistically.
Absolutely, and also in suicide. I mean, suicide is most common in the single white elder man in terms of populations, which is a lot of the population of the veterans that are back. But there was a big uptick, and people don't realize that. I mean, I'm not saying that the younger veterans don't have their challenges, and certainly they do. And this drawn-out war and the new type of combat is horrific, but it's actually the older vets who are really kind of killing themselves off. Those who were not, who didn't ever kind of reintegrate well, or just had traumas that were never processed properly.
I know that you, part of the new campus would be, I think you mentioned, would be involved with retraining and sort of almost repurposing the veterans and helping them find work and stuff like that. I have heard a little bit recently that specifically for like truckers or maybe it was with veterans, but retraining people for new jobs. The retraining programs have been sort of notoriously ineffective, especially considering how jobs are getting a lot more technical. And so I'm wondering what specifically, I'm just curious how you think about retraining vet. And I know what was the name of the project? You said you like project?
Team Rubicon.
Team Rubicon. That sounds like using veterans' skills. That sounds like it's in their skill set. I mean, they come back trained for war essentially. So how do you think about retraining in repurposing a veteran?
Well, I mean, that's an example. I mean, the thing about that when I've spent time with some of these guys and I've been there, I haven't deployed with them, although I wanted to, and there's something going on. But the thing about that work that's the most important to them, and I think really the most healing, is being together and having a purpose. You know what I mean? They get together for a period of time. Maybe it's a couple of weeks, maybe it's months. But during that time, they are alive and they feel useful. And that, you know, so they kind of, their esteem is built and they honor each other. So it's more about that ethos than it is the actual work. But they're doing work that is very, you know, in general, is physical and labor intensive. But it's what you're talking about is a fundamental issue, and that in the veteran space, there are a lot of nonprofits now that are springing up that are looking to identify what were the things that you did in the military, what are your skill sets, and then figuring out what are the employment, you know, the pathway, the employment pathways. It's like, what color is your balloon? I don't know if anyone read that book. Your parachute, right, whatever it is. So, but it's a great question, and it's not something that in the Health and Human Services we do particularly well. And it's not something that we do well around mental health issues and people that have serious mental illness, which is really the core population that the Department of Mental Health is supposed to focus on. And I'm trying to get to focus on more than it has historically. You know, because what we do is we'll say to someone that cares about a role in their community is, you're not ready. You have to get stable. When the fact of the matter is, if you give someone an opportunity and the support to succeed at what they want, then things like taking medications if you need medications, sleeping well and making sure you have a place to live, you know, having friendships, not using alcohol and drugs, that takes a whole new importance. Because you need those things to succeed if you have a job, or it doesn't have to be a job, something that you care about. But we don't do that. We say you have to take your meds and you have to do it routinely until you're stable, you know, until your symptoms are gone, and you have to be sober. But that linear thinking is really not going to get us where we need to go.
There's a book called Tribe.
Yeah, I know of that. Right?
It addresses very much, almost from a philosophical, but as well as very in-depth way, the warrior mentality and how in our culture we don't honor it compared to others.
That's right.
Supposed less sophisticated.
Yeah.
That recognize
None of it respect.
the warrior in our society has their role along with the shaman
Yes.
and the teacher and all of these other elements that make up the society.
Yep.
And it addresses the vets coming back with PTSD issues
Yeah.
that are in our youth.
Yeah.
And very much how these vets report that they love going back
Yeah.
because of the sense of belonging and having a mission,
Yes.
and how much more they felt alive
Yes.
than they did when they come back.
100%.
And so I think this, what you're addressing is that, you know, come back to the full where you use all of those skills and that union,
Yeah.
you know, that connection.
Yes.
We all seek, and
Yeah.
what is your purpose?
Yes.
And how do you feel you belong?
Yep.
Um,
Sebastian Junger, I think.
exactly. And it's,
Yeah.
it's a little book. And yeah.
And I mean, the thing for me is all about, I mean, everything that I think about when I'm trying to really operate at a high level and look at the systems is connectedness.
Exactly.
You know, if you have purpose, you're connected to, you know, the cosmos. You know, you're doing something. And if you're connected to people, you belong. And if you have those things, because what we focus on is the individual. We say we're gonna fix you, we're gonna treat you, we're gonna make you functional. And that's all important. I mean, we all want to be functioning at our highest level, but what really matters is being independent and connected. and our society is so disconnected. That's
Most
when we
kids are interdependent.
absolutely,
You
absolutely.
feel like you belong, and your sense
Yes.
of independence
Yes,
as an adult
No, they are.
is strengthened.
they feed on each other, and I know I think you're absolutely right. But I will say, and I say this a lot, that our society as a whole, and our communities, our neighborhoods are so divided, and divisive, that more people are sick, and they're sicker. And one of the expressions of that is the NIMBYism that kind of limits everything that we do. It's lovely to be here having this conversation in a nice small group, but what I can tell you is I go to these town halls. Like I was at a town hall in Santa Monica not long ago where I thought that they were going to start throwing stuff at me. Because I'm trying to talk about the connectedness and the need for people to
Well, I think it's maybe the book drop. Yeah, we drop books.
that's old school.
I have PTSD.
We got the mic drop
Yeah.
and the book drop.
No, but the inclusion, inclusiveness, which gets to this whole issue of belonging, it's the exact opposite. It's like, no, I can't take my kid to the park because I'm worried that he's going to step on a needle. My wife can't walk down the alley because some crazy guy is screaming at her. And then these get very contentious, and everyone kind of is like, okay, but unless we take a collective approach with every component of our communities and bring that to the table, we're never going to move forward. We're going to continue to have the same basic problems.
So let's. I think it's a great thing you brought it up because you're right. There is a NIMBY ideation that's around, and we have it in our neighborhood too. And some of them couldn't make it tonight because they were here. They would throw something at you.
Yeah, well,
No, I'm kidding, I'm
the
joking.
fruits and vegetables are back there.
Right, exactly.
No,
Grapes.
bring
They
it.
throw grapes.
I'm used to it.
No, but it is. I think it's a very important transformation to get the community to understand and to accept and to embrace, our people. Now, people they'll argue, because we have these arguments like every community, that these are not people from Studio City. These are people who are coming to Studio City in order to, and so we have to address that and understand, what is the solution to helping these people wherever they're from, which I think is a bigger idea, but we also have to address the concerns of people who are afraid, because we all live in some place and nobody wants something on their front yard exactly that's scary. So I just wonder, one question that has come up over and over again, which is we don't want to be judgmental or harsh about folks who are struggling. In fact, many of us are compassionate. But what should we do? Is a question. If you see someone who, I think we were in Studio City. It's fair to say that last week there was an incident that none of us really know the exact details of, but a guy was upset and there was a fight, and then the result was a media flash that it was a homeless guy and a celebrity, and I didn't get much more than that. I'm not trying to minimize that it was a crime or a situation, but people then wonder if there's somebody nearby the Starbucks, are they supposed to be scared? Should they call it them? And I wish I had the answer. I know you don't necessarily, maybe, but how do we address what can we tell our neighbors to I'll stop talking.
Yeah, I mean, the balance between public safety and public health is tough. There's a tension there. We see the pendulum swing in both directions. And you may recall last year there was an effort to put together a bill which would make it easier to hold individuals with serious mental illness and treat them involuntarily.
Is that the grieving disabled?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the whole issue at the individual level of autonomy and paternalism.
Yeah. Should we explain that for a minute? What the idea? Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the issue of, is it the
Landerman-Petrus Short LPS law,
right?
which is 60 years old, and really what it does is it describes a set of conditions within which you can where you can involuntarily detain and treat someone with a serious mental illness, and really it's 60 years old, and it needs to be revisited and re-engineered in a big way. And we're working on that. Actually, we're taking a much more holistic approach in Sacramento. I was in Sacramento and I lose track of time, a couple days ago, do it working on this and other things. But what it basically says is that if someone is dangerous to themselves or dangerous to somebody else, you can hold them. And you can treat them for a period of time until they're no longer dangerous to themselves or to another. And then it says also, if they're gravely disabled, which means that they're incapable of providing food, clothing, and shelter, you can actually get them a surrogate decision maker known as a conservator. But there are many reasons why the law and the way that it's being implemented are inadequate. I don't think they're specific enough. I think that the interpretation by the different entities that try to employ them, including the Department of Mental Health, we need to revisit it. And we also need to recognize that when you take away someone's decision-making capacity, that's a big deal. That's taking away the autonomy and being paternalistic. So when we do it, we have to come in with heavy-duty resources. In other words, when you decide that you're going to give someone a surrogate decision maker, that has to come with housing, it has to come with ongoing wraparound services with a goal of helping that individual recover their autonomy and their decision making, which may or may not happen, but you can't, I argue you can't, it's inhumane in your right conscience. You can't take someone's decision making without giving them the opportunity to restore that capacity.
And of course, it's not just mental health area. Look in New York, Virginia, Typhoid Mary, involuntarily locked up for being a danger to others.
That's right.
So I'm saying it's not just mental health. I've done a lot of 5150 cases myself. It's been
Well, Letterman Petrie Short, the LPS law, at least as I understand it, is around mental illness. In fact, it's around mental illness, and there's a debate about whether or not substance abuse is a part of the bill. If you really read the letter of the law, it talks about inebriates. That's not a term we use a lot anymore, but inebriates really, when you talk to most judges, will say that's for people that are chronic alcoholic. And as you probably know, there's a bill, Senate Bill 1045, which came out of San Francisco, which just gave a litany of things that if they were occurring, including homeless, serious mental illness, a certain number of visits to the hospital, a certain number of incarcerations, that then because of those factors, they could be given a conservative.
There are enhancements.
Yeah, but your point is actually well taken, because there are some who would say that the individual with serious mental illness who may have hepatitis C, for example, which is a real public hazard in Skid Row, is happening like now, is presenting a serious public hazard. It's a public safety issue,
Right.
and it's a public health issue. But right now, what I'll tell you is, if you had 10 mental health clinicians in Skid Row, 9 of them are going to not put the person on hold because the laws aren't clear. And because when you put someone on hold or you do something interventional, you're oftentimes going to get burned. You're going to get sued. The county's going to get sued, so everyone's risk averse.
This is some people pass in and out of the
Family,
My question is,
ACLU.
what is the borderline between the police versus mental health? Because I remember growing up, no loitering. People weren't allowed to loiter. And
Yeah.
even if you were dressed, you just weren't allowed to loiter. And I remember that's not no loitering, and that was just like a joke. And now, there are places you go here in the area where there are people, transients, whatever, just camped out with older stuff, and they don't move for days. And I don't know how that's humane either for them or for anything. So I think people wonder what's been going on the past 10 years. It's gotten so bad. It wasn't like this 10, 20 years ago.
Like this 2 years.
It's gotten like
You're saying that you feel that the onset or the appearance of people on the streets has gone up. I mean,
way
numbers.
up. And there seems to be no consideration for the community or them. I mean, I don't know if it's humane to leave them either wandering. I'm not giving answers, but it just seems like nobody cares and everyone's afraid to do something. And what you end up with is incidents where homeless attack people and they get hit by a car. I'm just saying, the status quo to me shows a lack of anybody doing it.
the acceptance of it, right?
Did you have a comment, ma'am?
My comment is about the number of people that you see. It seems to be a lot more prevalent now than it had been, like maybe, I can remember 30, 40 years ago. Thank God I can't remember. But anyhow, two of the things I can think of is, first of all, in the military, they've shown a lot of these young veterans that they're getting the same injuries that these football players were.
Yes.
Like traumatic injuries. They said when they're in an explosion, it creates a shock wave,
Yeah.
so they get a concussion. A lot of times, it's just treated like just a minor thing, and then they just have bed rest for a week or so, and they look like they're fine. But when they can't detect this until they die, and they do an autopsy, just like with football players, and they're finding some of these people, or a lot of them, did have the same type of traumatic brain
CTE.
Yeah, CTE.
Yeah, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE.
Yeah, that they do have, and they look like they're normal people, and you can't really tell till they die. And then the second thing is that I had taught elementary school for quite a long time, starting in the late 60s in a very poor neighborhood in Los Angeles. And we were even noticing there that there was an incredible amount of kids that we had that had been exposed in utero to various drugs and alcohol. A lot of times it was a hodgepodge of things. And I know that in certain cities I read where they did do testing of infants, newborns, and they found that in some of the parts of town there was an incredible amount of kids, 15-20% of the kids were showing up with drugs in their system. And I know a lot of these things, especially things like crack, it has a horrible effect on the kids. And the kids are they're never going to be normal. They're very abnormal and abnormal behavior. They'll have a lot of learning disabilities. And I have a friend that had done a lot of foster care, over 100 children, and she said the same thing, that the kids she had, there was something the matter with them, and they were never going to be okay. It wasn't like, you had some magic wand. And I think that just recently, and a lot of these people are adults now, and there's a lot of them now that have been exposed, in utero to various problems, and that's one of the reasons they're homeless now.
I have one comment. Dr. Sherin, the other day at the Board of Supervisors, the supervisors and Dr. Sherin announced, I thought, some very good news that the county's going to be, in addition to the many efforts, we are deploying some of the resources toward, early students, basically. We're funding more psychologists at LA, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the school district, which is huge. The county, LAUSD is one of the many districts in the county. And it's a great idea because obviously for what you're saying, which is that some people show up at school with some disadvantages or great challenges. And so being able to spot that early or being able to provide support early, just imagine a young person could be saved. So I sort of disagree with your idea. Some of them are very difficult. Some people are just having a rough road and it's going to be hard no matter what. But if you catch them young, they can either get the treatment that they need, or is the program up and running, or it's going to be headed?
Well, we just got authorization to invest about $18 million across the school districts of LA County, and there's a lot of school districts, and we are targeting ones that are the highest need for a variety of different reasons, and some of the money is being used to, what I say, train the ecosystem. So if you think of a school, it's got administrators, it's got teachers, it's got after school staff, it's got the parents, it's got the kids. And the idea is to kind of raise the awareness and understanding of what mental health and behavioral health issues are, what they look like, which is important. It gets to this issue of identifying things early, right? Then we're funding teams of staff from the department who are specifically focused on getting those kids and frankly the families the resources that they need, which we're kind of building out in the communities.
But the problem is that a lot of these families are really dysfunctional. And I'll give you another example. I have a friend who's a retired school nurse, and she goes around now and she does the vision testing for the LAUSD.
Yeah.
Somebody came in with a grant, I forgot who it was, and I think maybe the new mayor or somebody that they're gonna provide a free pair of glasses to everybody in LA University that needs it. She's the one that does the vision screen. And she's telling me stories that there's so many people that they send home the notice for that they're, you know, they have a problem and they'll give them a free pair of glasses. And then the parents do not agree to have it done. And she was telling me, I was with her last night, and she was telling me she was at one school, an elementary school in South Central someplace. And she said out of 60, close to 70 notices that they send home, it's not just sending home the notices, they get called twice also by somebody, a school personnel. Spanish is provided if they need to in Spanish. And she said they only got 18 of them back. The parent agreed to
Yeah.
they're giving them the free glasses. You know, they don't have to leave, they don't get the free glasses.
Yeah. No, it's.
And they can't get them to
Well,
eat.
this is a part of the problem with kind of the homeless population. Getting back to your question, I mean, a lot of people. What's happening, I think, over time is that homelessness is becoming an acceptable life choice. It's a choice. You know, if you, particularly for younger folks. I mean, this is what I'm seeing, and I do work at Skid Row. It's about once a month. There are younger people who, you know, want to have a phone, they want to eat decent food, they want to have a car. And it's either that or rent an apartment. And it's a lot of them have jobs. You know, they may not have full-time jobs and they may not have great paying jobs, but they work. And I think that getting back to the issue of public safety, homelessness is a problem for our communities. So I would argue it can't be a choice. Now there are people, and the people I focus on, who are homeless because they are really sick. And those are people that we really, really need to focus our resources on. The housing with intensive services, and recognize that it's going to take a lot of work. Individuals who are choosing to be homeless, I think, is a different, and I'm not saying it's black and white. There's a ton of gray. But for people that are choosing to be homeless, I think we have to figure out a different set of solutions. And those set of solutions have to require heavy-duty investment by the individual. You know, if we did, I mean, I may hit this.
Talk about those who are not suffering from health
Yes.
issues.
Or,
Those
right.
ones, due to the lack of housing and the cost of rents right now.
Or
Or-
Yeah.
So those people
Right. I mean,
aren't a real risk to
I mean, I would
the
argue,
community at large.
well,
Or-
well, I mean, you tell me. Like, for example, if you go out and you're seeing a lot of encampments, the encampments are not people. They're not all. Not everybody has serious mental illness that's in the street. There's a ton of addiction. I'm not saying there's not. Ton. But there's also people that are choosing to be homeless because of what I was saying, that the kind of economic factors of our society force people out of homes. You know, right now there are a lot of low-income housing projects. There are a lot of boarding cares that are closing because they're just getting sold, and people are making a lot of money, and that's just fleecing folks into the street. So there's a lot of factors. But I guess what I'm saying is, we as I would say as LA County, and I do say this to my fellow department heads and the board, that we ought to, if we're able to say something, there are individuals who have serious disability that are homeless who we really, really need to take care of. We need to hold them and make sure they're safe. But those individuals who are choosing, it's not that they're bad people, but we have to give them an opportunity. Right? They need opportunity.
It isn't against the law to be homeless.
Right.
all of
In
that,
some-
No.
I guess it's what you're saying, that there's a generation that's saying, why should we adhere to your standard of what constitutes a
I
home?
think that may be part of it. I guess what I'm saying is that the homeless, out of necessity or choice,
Right.
there are more people that are becoming homeless, and we're seeing it all over our neighborhoods. And I think we ought to be compelled to say that we're going to take care of the really vulnerable, but those who are not the really vulnerable, we have to say, I would say we ought to offer jobs to everybody that's homeless. We ought to offer a job and say, if you work, we're going to give you enough, doing something useful, right, to our communities, to our neighborhoods, to everything that we're trying to do in Los Angeles County, then you're going to make enough money to have a place to live. In fact, we'll give you a place to live if you work. know, that's a different thing. Right now, we are much more in the handout. We're going to build it. We're going to save you. And I think that victimizes people who otherwise might be able to really step up. And I mean, that may be a conservative view, but we have to do something.
Everybody wants to say, let me just make one quick comment and then I just want to say that it's possible that the population of what you described as, I didn't say voluntary, but people who are choosing it are not necessarily crazy,
No.
and that's a statement term, but are not suffering.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's a highly rational solution to an impossible way to be here. So they figure out if I keep the Prius, and I can crash in the Prius, and I can shower at the Y, and you do it, and you realize, oh, that's a responsible, smart person who can't afford to be here. And then what the plus is, it's not. Okay, so let's hear about that.
I'm so
Yeah, no,
sorry.
please.
I'm not going to throw any further anything.
No, please.
We want to hear from everybody.
Here.
Yeah, tell me.
It's not responsible, it's
Right.
not mature, it's not well, it's very, very, very self-centered. It's very self-centered. You know what? I want to live at the Griffith Observatory. Apparently I have every right to do that, but why not? It's where I want to live. So if people are coming to Sherman Oaks or coming to California or coming and living, I would love to live in Paris. I can't afford to live in Paris, so I'm not going to go live in Paris. If people are coming here and the whole excuse is, well, they can't afford a place in Studio City, then go somewhere where you can afford it. I had to, we all have to. I do. I seriously want to live at the Griffith Observatory. And I think it's very responsible for me.
Do you mean in the building, or do you mean in the parking
It's
lot?
very responsible for you to do that.
Well, no, but I don't understand what you mean. You mean you want to live in the observatory itself?
I want to live on the grounds. Yeah, I want access to everything.
Well, but whereas, I mean, I appreciate the view, and I think it's a very
sorry.
strong. No,
This is what it's all
It's
about.
important. This is what it's about, exactly. And we have to address those questions. But absolutely.
Can I add
Sure.
one more thing?
Yep.
My heart is huge around the whole issue. So it's not a heartless place, is it? I think we're doing them, the homeless, the addicts, and why addicts wouldn't be included in mental illness, I
They
don't
are.
understand. They are.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
Addiction.
But we're doing them a huge disservice by not getting them into a hospital against their will, with their will, out of their wits, whatever. If they cannot take care of themselves, we as a society, we as people, need to take care of our people.
But let me just, because we had a woman sit right here at a forum 2 forums ago who came to our forum, and it was, a bunch of people like us, and she was younger, and she said, hi, I came and I wanted to just get a word in edgewise. Where is the affordable housing around here? I work as a lab technician for a dispensary company. I'm a scientist, but I don't make a lot of money. And I have to live with 2 buses and a train. And she said, can you direct me to where? Because I work near here and I want to be around here. And we all sort of were like, affordable housing? No, you have a 2-hour drive if you want to come to work. Or at night, if you want to come to a forum, we finally got one of our residents to drive her back to Van Nuys, out there where she lives.
And that's
But no, that's not.
Person, no, I mean, it's like that, and that takes care of that for one woman.
Right, but she was telling us that she can't find a place at a rate that's reasonable. She either has the impossible life, or, I mean, she might say, and she didn't, but she might say, I'm going to try to, if I, for 6 months, they call it couch surfing. It's not a term I made up, but, so I don't think that's irrational. And I think that the society, I mean, this is me speaking on behalf of myself, but, we have to find some way to include people who are, because, just final point, then I'll open it up to the rest of you. There was a senator today, or congresswoman, who was with J.D. Diamond, who's the head of Chase Bank.
Catherine Porter.
Yeah, and she made a very interesting point, which was, why don't you explain to us how this would work out? How could you cover your costs? And when you pencil it out, which is what people do, because I know it's easy for us who live in Studio City.
Did they include the Senate?
Yeah. I don't, right, he said, but everybody says that. Everybody says, we don't, but our attitude we have to be cautious about including people who are young and trying, because I think for a lot of reasons which are not on the agenda, like Prop 13, things that allow people who live here to be comfortable and to borrow against their property and pay less property tax. There's a lot of reasons. But, I think your point of view is valid, and I'd love to hear from other people too.
Yeah, and
I just want to bring out.
No, you have to come on strong. That's what's
I
best.
just want to try to say this quickly, which is that if you go on Zillow, which is the rental home site to look for homes to rent in this area, it says the homes in this area have gone up by 5% a year. Well, that doesn't sound like a lot, but over 4 years, that's 20%. So a home that was $4,000 4 years ago is now $5,000. And I can tell you from personal experience that homes that I was looking at in the 3s are now, we're talking now in the 6s here.
Yeah.
So even 5% isn't even true. I feel they're going up 10% a year just look at the websites. It's unreal. The homes that are just what I consider average homes under 2,000 square feet in this area, let alone a pool, are now in the 6s. Yes.
When you say six, are you talking?
6,000 a month.
For rent.
Oh, 100%.
I'm a real estate.
Well,
agent.
I know it because I am on Zillow all the time, and I'm just telling you that it's
Challenge.
it's crazy.
But no, but this, I just want to say, what you're saying, I think is really important, because what you're saying is, and it gets back to the whole issue of what people choose to do, and kind of what you're saying is that if you can't afford, if you don't have the means to then you're kind of you're impositioning the community that if you actually want to do that, you've got to figure out a way so that you can kind of be independent, and that's I mean, these are philosophical questions. You should come to the Board of Supervisors and get on the microphone like this gentleman.
Give it to me, I would.
Well, he can show you where
That's
it
right.
is.
Let me make a quick plug. The Board of Supervisors, for whom Jonathan and everybody in the county works, on Tuesday mornings at Ken Hahn Hall of Administration, and they do take testimony. And frequently there's mental health stuff on the agenda, but also lots of other county business. And Studio City Neighborhood Council meets the third Wednesday of every month at CVS Radford, and we are at studiocitync.org, so you can look up our meeting schedule. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. Did somebody else have a Richard?
I was just gonna, I don't know if we want to continue this line or what, but there are a lot of restaurants in Studio City. We're renowned for a whole panoply and variety of them, from, the chain, Burger King, whatever, all the way up. And none of them are being paid the kind of salaries that would allow them to live adequately
Independently, right.
in Studio City. Now, that's just that. You also talk about, there's certain communities, such as Santa Monica, I think, whose fire department can't live.
No, that's right.
And so they have to have some kind of affordable housing. These are
Right.
people who should be living in the community to serve the community. So how do you address that? It's not a question of, I want to live in Santa Monica, therefore I've got to make enough to afford that. Fire departments don't have that kind of resource. So,
It's a
not
question.
a choice in that respect. Nor are the waiters and waitresses. A lot of them, you talk to them, you ask them, by the way, it's such and such, do you know? They go, I don't live here. How the hell could they? They have to take a bus, train, an old jalopy, and that contributes to everything else that we complain about living there.
Yes.
Yeah, my
Okay.
argument, my frustration is not an answer at all. It's just.
No, you're right.
Yeah, this idea, I want to answer what you're saying. This idea of living wage, a lot of these jobs, like working at a fast food place or working at a Starbucks or something, they're not supposed to be living wage. They're supposed to be, like the things I did when I was in high school and when I was in college, and I had to work when I was in college, these were just low paying jobs. You're living at home anyhow, you don't have to make a living wage. Or maybe you're retired and you just need a little extra income from your Social Security, so that those are the people that take jobs like that. It's not supposed to be a living wage.
Well, I think that
Look at McDonald's.
it's a fair point that those are entry level jobs. That's what they always say.
Able.
But on the other hand, it could be a little, it depends how you want to invite people into society.
Well, I
If it's
have
not
to tell you
through a
something.
living wage, then it's got to be through because not everybody has a parent in the neighborhood, in the
Yeah.
world, because I wish.
But
I
they're
wish.
posting jobs. For instance, at Starbucks, I have to tell you, if I had started, let's say when I was 19, working at Starbucks, and I kind of stayed with them, 10 years
down the road, I'd be the manager at Starbucks. So if you're still doing your burger flipping, whatever the hell thing, then there's something the matter with you too. You can't move.
Well,
That's not-
yeah, I'm not sure that, I will say this, that, that is a point of view, and I think that there's, one danger that we all can fall into, and myself included. Oh, Richard, I want to let you speak, yeah.
Yeah, well, quite a while ago, I was on the street trying to get the kids, homeless kids, into school. For parents, we couldn't do anything about, we didn't know like to do that. But we could say, hey, you're under 16, go to school. And how come you're not staying inside the mission? You're camping out in front of Alamo or, and they said, we don't want to hear the rap. Therefore, we'd rather be outside on the pavement rather than inside and hear whatever kind of disguised preaching is going on. Some people didn't want to go inside these various different missions. Anyway, my question to you basically is, if you are able to get your 1,200 units on the Westwood campus, are they going to be open to any veteran, or is it discrimination based on rank, on gender, or on disability, or how are you going to make that work, considering the great number of veterans that need help?
Well, if you believe the point in time count, there are probably around 6,000 homeless veterans in LA County. And
Okay.
the whole point of that was to prioritize veterans that were vulnerable. Veterans, like we were talking before about those who really need help and need to be surrounded by enriched resources. So that's kind of the target population. And I'll tell you one other thing, and I got to go.
Yes.
One other thing is we tried to build into the plan a bunch of what I would say, workforce housing. For this reason, right? For veterans. So if you're a veteran and you work at the VA and you're kind of cleaning the floors or working in the cafeteria, there's no way that you're going to be able to live around the VA on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
No way. In fact, we're talking like 2-3 buses. I mean, I know a lot of these guys because I used to be there with them and I would talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to I think a number of these points, what we were saying is we're going to have affordable housing for veterans that are working at the VA on the campus as well,
Okay.
so that they don't. Which allows them actually to build their own careers. And the idea was to have it funded in a way that was tiered based upon their income.
Do they have to be federal employees or just?
Those would be, yes, but that's the group that's currently working in the VA now.
Uh-huh.
And then those who have serious mental illness, comorbid addictions, other disabilities, who really, including like head trauma, those individuals, we were trying to create a community for them that will nurture them and care for them and allow them to heal. Many of them probably will never be able to move out of that campus. It's their community. But it was donated to them in the 1880s as a home. And we've forgotten that. And that's why the VA got sued and lost. And hopefully that'll happen, because it would be nice.
Who's sued?
The ACLU.
Because the VA has dropped the ball on
Yes.
honoring
That are
this.
commercial enterprises.
There were 11 commercial enterprises on the campus
Right.
making money and not even giving the money back to the veterans. The whole thing is, I work with some of the people that actually are currently in jail.
Yeah, listen, before you leave, let's have a quick lightning round. If anybody didn't get a question, and then we'll
Yeah.
let the doctor, because it's very nice of you to come. and
Yeah,
spend
you
some time
bet.
with us. Just quickly, yeah.
The $18 million that was funded, that
Yes, for the
was
schools.
federal or state, where did the money come from?
That's state money.
And from?
State of California, millionaire's tax.
What?
There's a millionaire's tax.
It came out of that?
It's called the Mental Health Services Act. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's one of the funding streams is called prevention, early intervention. This is prevention money.
Got it.
Yeah. And we're going to be pushing more and more of it out into what I call the community access platforms. Schools, libraries, although this isn't a county library.
Right.
We put resources in the West Hollywood library. The parks, the faith-based organizations, home visiting for families that really are high risk for kids. It's nice to be here.
Yeah.
I can tell you, you have a very vocal advocate in the midst pretty much every week. That's you,
Oh,
sir.
yeah, well,
That's how we got to know you.
right, thank you,
And,
and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Are there any other final questions before we let Dr. Sherin go? I have one just general one.
Go for it.
Real simple. Suicide rates have gone up.
Yeah.
I think, I mean,
They
it's
have.
very hard to date on these
It
things, but
is.
it seems like there's an actual increase in the number of people killing themselves. And I'm wondering, do you have, I mean, nobody knows exactly, but, first of all, is there anything that we can do as a community, red flag spotting? I'm always struggling for the people in our midst who might be vulnerable, but what might be causing? Is it the stress of these machines that get the dopamine going?
Yeah.
I just don't know where.
Well, we talked, I don't want to be too philosophical, but we talked earlier about connectedness versus disconnectedness. And there's something I talk about called the other LOL, the lethality of loneliness. Lethality of loneliness. So people, when they become really isolated, are actually at more and more risk. But you can take someone and they go and they see a clinician, and the most seasoned clinician will spend time with them and they'll commit suicide, and you wouldn't know. So it's very, very hard to predict. But what matters, in my opinion, is creating access platforms like I'm talking about, where you have trained eyes, people are aware of basic indicators of someone suffering, behavior is changing, they're not communicative, they're isolating. That if we as communities recognize that, and don't just recognize it, but have something you can do. Because now when you call the Department of Mental Health, you're not always going to get a great response. I know that. And I'm trying to fix it, and it's a big problem. And it's all government, and the government isn't the solution. It's the collective that's the solution. But if we're able to activate these community platforms where people come that tend to have more and more need, and we have the ability to navigate access to resources that can be helpful, and it's not just mental health treatment. Mental health treatment is important, but it's going after the stressors in life. And it's, the stressors in life, whether it's addictions, whether it's mental health, whether it's a physical disability, whether it's being homeless, whether it's having legal issues, whether it's having unemployment or underemployment or undereducation, whatever those things are, we have to, as a community, try to connect people. Because we have a lot of resources that I don't think are accessed adequately or strategically. They get chewed up by the same people, and they don't get actually spread out in a way that's going to help the most folks.
Right, that is a big challenge.
It is.
Well, very much appreciate your
Good to see you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll see you on Tuesday.
Yeah, see you on Tuesday soon. Right, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, you bet.